Like, it'd be really easy to skip small group to watch a game. But I always try to make sure that I don't do that because I need to just keep priorities where they should be, right? Mm-hmm. I also think, the fact that my teams tend to lose a lot helps because that really keeps perspective at the forefront.
All right, friends, here we are for this week's show. This is Lisa Anderson here with you. Okay, here we are for our roundtable. And we figured since we're heading into fall, I guess there are seasons around this topic. We know that there are. And so we're going to talk about sports. So everyone who is into the NFL for sure just gave a collective cheer. There are other sports that start in the fall, and there are certainly other sports that happen throughout the year. And so we brought 3 sports fans, and by fans, I mean fanatics, to the table to talk about their love of sports, but with the caveat of how do you love sports, but not make sports an idol in your life. So we have got Jesse Florea. Jesse, great to have you here.
Glad to be back. Yeah.
It's super fun. Jonathan Jenkins, one of our vid guys. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey.
And Rachel Pfeiffer. She's from our magazines, our kid magazines in particular. So, Rachel, good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Everyone who ever read Club and Club Junior can give a little shout for Rachel. Is that what you primarily do?
That is, yeah. Okay. Kids magazines.
Yeah, so that's great. So, all right, well, let's get into this here because first of all, we have to get the lay of the land and find out what sports you're into and why. Did someone introduce them to you? Did you just find them on your own? Have you progressively become more of a fan over the years? So, Jesse, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I just want to say that I did not choose sports. Sports chose me.
Well, okay.
I did
kind of like the Lord, huh?
Yes,
okay,
no,
good.
I think so. Looking all the way back, I was 2 years old.
Wow.
My parents had divorced. I'm living with my grandma, my aunt, and my mom, none of whom are sports fans. And the Winter Olympics were on.
Okay.
And I dominated that TV. They could not turn it. One time they did turn it, and I ran up to the big console and I pounded on it saying, more key, more. I couldn't say ski back then. More key, more key. And so it goes all the way back to there. But I've since then followed, you name a sport,
okay.
I followed it. Growing up, I
No
could
way.
give all the stats, whether it was football, baseball, basketball, played all those through high school. Now I'm a fanatic of disc golf and table tennis and still play basketball every week. But yes, no, sports has been a huge part of my life, my entire life.
Okay. Well, and now that we're saying this, talk about just briefly let us know which of these sports have you played versus which ones are you spectator only?
I've played them all.
No way.
No,
What?
I really have. Yeah, no, it was my identity growing up, and I know we'll get into that a little bit later, but yeah, that's literally how I defined my worth, was being good at sports and winning.
Okay.
Until I accepted the Lord. So yeah, no, sports was a big part of my life and still is, and sometimes a little bit too much.
Okay. I was going to say you're almost like hearkening back to the Michael Jordan, Deion Sanders crossovers here. I'm kind of like, how can you be good at multiple things? Or maybe you're not saying you were good at all of them, but you certainly had to be proficient. So that's pretty interesting. All right, cool. Jonathan, how about you? What's your sport du jour?
My main sport, honestly, is NASCAR, and that didn't really start until I'd say 2007, really.
Okay.
I grew up as a missionary kid overseas, so I was more around a lot of soccer and that sort of thing. That never really stuck. The kids over there were incredibly aggressive because that was the main sport.
Okay.
When you have 5 people trying to slide tackle you at the same time, it's not particularly fun if you're not into that. But came back and had somebody introduce me to at least one of the drivers because he was from where they were from originally. Mm-hmm. So tangentially a fan, but didn't follow anything until 2007, but have followed pretty strictly ever since. So It's been like 17 or 18 years now.
Interesting. Okay. So, but also there are other motorsports in particular that you like.
Yeah.
But definitely NASCAR's at the top.
It's the main one.
Okay.
I've been introduced to a lot of other motorsports as it's come and gone, but I kind of dip in and out of those fandoms a little bit and just touch on those.
Okay.
But NASCAR's the bread and butter.
Gotcha.
So.
Rachel, how about you?
Yeah, I grew up in Northeast Ohio, so I don't really think that I had much of an option. I grew up a Cleveland Browns, Cleveland Cavaliers, and Cleveland Indians, and now Cleveland Guardians, since they changed the name.
Okay.
Fan. I was, I believe, 9 years old when sports were just always on, and I decided I loved baseball. Don't know why. Don't remember what it was about the game, but yeah, I am a 5th generation Cleveland baseball fan. So
Wow. Okay.
that is definitely the sport I follow the most, even though I do follow the other Cleveland teams. And then when I moved out here to Colorado, I was introduced to hockey. And so now I'm a Colorado Avalanche fan as well. So
Okay. Putting it all together. That's great. Okay, I wouldn't say so. I've got some weird sports background. Definitely not. I remember my dad and my brother watching sports, and then my mom watching football because she was in love with Joe Montana back in the day, and then Steve Young of the San Francisco 49ers. I grew up in the Bay Area. But I never got into it. What I did get into was I became a swimmer because my mom forced me to, because she was not professional, she was a competitive swimmer back in the day and actually trained for the Olympics. Then when I was in high school, don't be jealous, but I was on varsity badminton. And so that was
Impressive.
extremely impressive, let's be honest. I too have followed both summer and winter Olympics often. A number of different events that I like best. I won't get into all of those. But lately, I've gotten kind of into the NFL because first of all, I like big plays. So I kind of got into following certain players and certain, just watching certain things that have gone down and stuff. But then also, not going to lie, I like following some of their personal lives. So I get all into their business about what are they about. And then I like watching them in games. So that's kind of a both and. So probably not the truest sports fan at this table, but I had to put in my 2 cents as far as that goes. So, all right. Do you have a specific memory from a game or a specific sports memory that is maybe that had an influence on why you got into sports or liked a particular sport or whatever, or what just really, when you go back to it, you're like, oh man, if I could live that or relive that, that would be amazing.
I think for me, the 2007 Cleveland Indians made it all the way to the American League Championship Series. They almost made it to the World Series. And that was the first time that I followed a team for the whole entire season. And so when I think back on becoming a sports fan, I think that it was a combination of really enjoying the sport, and then the very first season I followed the team, they were really good and they were really fun. I just remember one of their celebrations when they were doing a post-game interview, they would do a pie in the face to whoever was doing the interview. And as a kid, that was hilarious. That was so much fun. There were a lot of walk-offs that season. And so I think they're just following that team as the first team that I really got into was big, because I think that really solidified it for when, I'm watching a season where they're not very good or things like that.
Again, going back to your 5th generation comment with the Guardians Indians, which is impressive. Those are my favorite memories, are the family memories, because my dad, taught me how to shoot a layup. And then we had Bronco tickets, Elway's rookie year. That's going back a little way. As you know, he's already retired in the Hall of Fame. But, probably one of my best live event memories was the last game in Mile High Stadium. I was there with my son. My son's birthday's right around Christmas, and when he was old enough to realize that we were giving him one present for both Christmas and his birthday, he didn't like those double dip gifts. He's like, no, Dad, I want a birthday present and a Christmas present, right? And so I got him Bronco tickets every year, and we'd go together. But that last game in Mile High, where they beat the 49ers, and we were sitting in the South bleachers, which was all the rowdy, crazy people, and these seats didn't have backs. It was just benches. And the game ends, and all of a sudden, people start pulling out all these tools, and the bench starts shaking, and they ripped up these 20-foot pieces of fiberglass, and they're waving them in the air, and there's shards of fiberglass falling on my son and myself, which was way dangerous. And they show a montage of all the highlights in Mile High Stadium, and just me and my son with our arms around each other, just that moment, just me protecting him from all the shards of fiberglass and things falling on him. It was,
Yeah.
I'll never forget that memory.
Well, I am 100% hoping you took a shard home.
No,
What?
I tried. They took it away for us. As you're leaving the stadium, they would not let anybody exit with any memorabilia from the stadium.
No,
Yeah.
that's terrible.
Yeah.
You should have swallowed it or something.
I feel like that's worse.
I'm like, I know.
is, yeah.
I'm like giving all these ideas like, too late. Jonathan, how about you?
I'll say it's kind of along the same lines, family or friends memories. I'd say there's kind of two that come to mind, one past, one modern. The past one was 2007, ironically, seems to be a shared year. My dad and I went to our first race at Charlotte. They have an all-star race, which brings out the biggest and the best, but it's a very intense kind of night that's set up for a lot of pomp and circumstance. The winner gets $1 million in bragging rights. So it's a fun time, but a little bit cheaper cost for us to go. And we made that a tradition basically all the way through 2017 after I graduated college and moved away for a while. So having that core memory with both my dad and occasionally my uncle would join us as well for that. My mom participated in watching, but never really went to it. And then the second one would be 2024. I actually went with producer John, who's been on here many, many times. We went to Daytona, which is like the Super Bowl of NASCAR.
Yeah.
Right at the start of the season down in Florida. And it was a full, like a 5-day deal. But one of the best sports memories I've ever had. So very, very fun.
That's really cool. Well, and it strikes me how, again, for the people that are listening who maybe haven't experienced sports personally or didn't play sports or whatever, because of like television and movies and all that, there are a lot of sports that have been elevated, or you even get an idea about them because of, maybe because of the way that they were portrayed. Are there any that come to mind that for you, maybe for your sport of choice, or like the definitive movie out there or something? Anything you can think of that's just great? Like I have this on VHS. Yeah.
Sadly, I probably do have Hoosiers on VHS.
Hoosiers! I remember watching that.
I mean, if you grew up playing basketball, just the purity of the sport, Gene Hackman going there. Okay, kids, let's measure this. The basket's 10 feet high. It's 15 feet away, right? Like, because they're playing in the state championship in a huge arena for the first time. And he's like, you know what? This is just like our gym. Yeah. Let's get back to that. And so Hoosiers is big. Yeah, that movie always gets me. The movie that I always cry at is Remember the Titans.
Oh, yeah.
And there's that poignant scene where the one defensive end visits the guy who's in the hospital who's been, paralyzed through play. And the guy walks in, and of course it's an African-American player with a white player. And then the guy in the hospital goes, "Don't you recognize that's my brother?" I weep every single time at that scene. And my family makes fun of me every single time.
Jesse.
But man, that is a great, great movie.
That's pretty cool.
Man, there are so many great baseball movies, right? But man, The Sandlot is one, right? Grew up watching it. So many great lines. Still have to watch that one every summer for sure.
That's like a quintessential summer movie for
It
sure.
is.
I think it's often in lists of the best summer movies of all time. So yeah.
I'll say for me, probably I was just at the right age for it, but Cars was a big thing.
Oh,
It
yeah.
happened right before I started my NASCAR kick. So, but I'd say in terms of modern, the new F1 movie that came out this year is just fantastic representation.
That's great. All right. So when you think of people who, because people say this, and this is present company excluded, of course, when people go too far with sports, let's put on our judgy hats. And you guys, even as people who probably are being judged by other people for your love of sports, your investment in sports, time, money, attention, all of that, what would you say? Like, what's your line in the sand of things that you've seen other people do that you're like, no way, they are completely cray. I'm not going to go there. I'm not that much of a nut or a fanatic or whatever. I have standards. What do you think of when you think of the people that are just so committed and crazy and invested that it's beyond the pale?
Yeah, I experienced that once in my home. There was a particular Bronco playoff game against the Browns where it looked like they were going to lose. It looked bad, and my mom was like, "Why are you even watching this thing?" And the Broncos came back, and my dad, I mean, this is they're divorced now. This might be why. Got in my mom's face and goes, "Don't you ever give up on the Broncos." So if you are hurting your family and screaming at people because of your love of sports, you've probably gone a little far.
Okay, that's a great example.
You might want to tone that back a little bit.
Intense.
Yes.
But you haven't done that?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Yeah, again, that was something my wife and I talked about before we got married. It was
marriage tips, y'all.
Yeah, good. Marriage tips exactly is you put your family first. My wife isn't a huge sports fan. She'll put up with some of it during some seasons. But yes, I've had to tone back my fandom. I don't have ESPN at home because I know it'd become an idol.
Yeah.
So I just look at the ESPN app instead and just follow my teams that way.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, no, I think my mom was actually at that game in person. It's still the only game she's attended in person. They don't let you go back if you were there at that game. No. Now, I would say, when the Cavs won the championship in 2016, because that's the only one of my teams I've ever got to watch actually win the championship, there were people that were sobbing. And there were people that were just talking about how it was the greatest day of their lives to watch a team win. And I remember being like, wow, if this is the most important thing that's happening in your life, like that's not. So that is something that has had an impact on me, and something I try to keep in mind is at the end of the day, it's just a game. And as fun as it is, and as fun as it would be to watch my other teams win championships, I never want to get to that point where it feels like, oh, like this is like the most important thing that could happen to me is my team winning a championship. Yeah.
I'll say, kind of going off that too, I think if it affects the rest of your week, like one game or one race affecting the rest of your week in and of itself and your mood, like being frustrated is a part of sports, or being sad that your team lost. In NASCAR, you kind of get used to it because you don't win percentages are not high. It's not 1v1, so it doesn't happen often. So you kind of learn to enjoy the big moments, but if it goes beyond that and affects the way you treat other people, I think it's definitely stepped over a line.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm reminded of, so my mom, when I referenced my mom being a competitive swimmer, she actually was training for the Olympics. She did long distance open water swims primarily, but she did a bunch of different things. And for her, it was, this was not long after, only a couple decades after the whole Eric Liddell, memorialized in Chariots of Fire, the film. But her folks were very passionate about her not competing on Sunday because of that was just the cultural norm there in Christian churches as she was growing up and whatnot. And so when I started swimming, I got to a certain point, and then when meets, which swim meets often are on Sundays, I got pulled, and my mom pulled me for that reason. And so she would say that absolutely it encroaching on a Sunday was a big deal for her and my dad. Now, what's funny is I actually had a friend tell me about a guy in her church who during football season will, during the sermon, have his AirPods in and his phone out, be watching the game, like while the pastor is preaching. And I'm like, at that point, why are you even there? Like, you just need to go. But maybe he thought he'd get half credit or something for being in the pew, even though he wasn't paying attention. So I was like, wow. So you go from my mom and her convictions to let's just catch this game right here, right now, and we'll be out before the benediction. So I don't know about that. But okay. But what for you personally, what have you taken or steps that you've taken to ensure maybe that sports don't take preeminence in your life? What does it look like for you to check yourself, or maybe you have other people that help you in this area? Have you had any areas of personal conviction where you've had to pull back or say, okay, this is getting a little out of hand? How do you make those decisions?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a lot of watching how I spend my time, how I spend my money, right? I always try to watch a couple live sporting events a year. I try to always go to a baseball game. I might go to a basketball game when I'm home around the holidays in Cleveland. Usually go to a hockey game or two with friends. But, I'm a big jersey person, actually. I love owning jerseys. I think they're so much fun. But that's another thing where I try to make sure that I'm not spending a ton of money on all the gear, all the tickets, keeping it at a reasonable level. And even with the streaming services, right? Like trying to make sure, for me, I pay for the services to watch baseball, to watch hockey, but I actually refuse to pay for the NFL streaming service because I said, no, it's too much. That's too much money. That's too much money. So,
that's funny.
And I think with time, it's a thing too, where it's like, there are a lot of times my team's playing on, they might be playing while I'm in church, like you were talking about, in which case I go to church and I do not watch the game during church.
Okay.
Or even the night of my small group, right? Like it'd be really easy to skip small group to watch a game. But I always try to make sure that I don't do that because I need to just keep priorities where they should be, right? So I think those are some of the big things for me. I also think, the fact that my teams tend to lose a lot helps because that really keeps perspective at the forefront. So I think that helps too,
And maybe then you can't watch the entire season if they're already out by the time the playoffs happen and all that. So, okay, Jonathan, you'll have to, someone from your team has to tail Rachel at church to make sure she's not watching games, that she's telling the truth. So
cell phone cameras are great nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So anyone else?
I think for me, like a big part of it is that mood. I remember when I was a kid and my favorite driver, Jeff Gordon, wrecked out of a race really early. I was very dejected, and a family friend of ours who I looked up to, I was almost a grandfather figure, I was about to turn the race off, and he was like, really? You can just turn it off over that? And it was a bit of a reality check at the time, like, okay, my mood should not just be determined by what happened to this particular guy on this particular day. And a combination of that and just NASCAR is a little bit tough because it's always on a weekend, normally on a Sunday, maybe a Saturday night if you're lucky, but trying to also make sure that if it doesn't, or if it encroaches on something else that should be prioritized, whether it's church related or working there, I need to be okay with missing that time. If I'm not, and I'm more urgent about getting home to watch the start of the race than I am to attend the meeting or to finish helping at church or something along those lines, like then that's a priority shift that needs to happen. That cannot be the priority over church.
Now, I love your point, Jonathan, about your mood, because I see that with myself. So I'm wondering, what is the okay time with being depressed after your team loses? Because honestly, the Avs or the Nuggets lose, and the games end about 10:30. I'm not sleeping. I'm done. That night is a waste for me. I'll just lay there in bed and try not to keep my wife awake.
Oh, no.
Because it does. It affects your mood. I think that's a big thing, and especially growing up. I didn't accept Christ and pray to accept Christ till I was 13, and we never went to church. And so my identity was sports and winning, and so I've always been competitive and found worth in that. And so, or even if your team does well, you feel a sense of worth in that, like, I'm part of a championship team because I watched the Avalanche win the Stanley Cup, right? Obviously, we have nothing to do with it, although I will wear certain socks and hats during games, which may or may not be a good idea or even Christian. I'm not sure. It's just something I do.
You just have to be safe, though. You got to make sure there's any chance.
Exactly. If this hat is affecting the Broncos season, I'm going to continue wearing the hat. But as far as perspective, I did an interview years ago with John Smoltz, Major League Baseball pitcher, Hall of Famer, announces a lot of the games now. He's still very involved in the sport. And I was doing it for Breakaway Magazine and Clubhouse Magazine. And he said something, because I asked him how he deals with the ups and downs, right? Because they're on the greatest stage and they lose in front of millions of people. And he said something that I've heard a million times now, but hadn't heard it back then. He says, you have to play for an audience of one. You have to thank God for your gifts and abilities, use them to glorify Him, and not worry about the rest. And so again, if your focus is on Christ, whether it's in watching sports or playing sports or just being a fanatic in any way, I think it gives you that perspective that Christ is still number one. You're playing for Him. Everything you do should reflect and honor Him, including how you handle your sports team's wins and losses, especially if you're in a stadium where, where your team won and the other team lost, and you're sitting next to like 5 fans from the other team. You probably shouldn't rub it in their face.
Right. And when you're plotting to try to steal a piece of the historic furniture and stuff, and then
I'm still a little bummed
that's
about
not
that,
gonna
actually.
happen. So, such great thoughts. And it's funny because I realize that we're talking about sports here, but it's like anyone can fill in the blank. You know, you could put in fashion, you could put in movies or certain celebrities, you could put in Comic-Con, you could put in, you know, what are the things, you know, as you're listening to this, think through what your thing is. And it is great just to check and to get other people around you to help you make sure that you're keeping the main thing, and you are prioritizing Jesus, you're prioritizing other people, you're prioritizing obviously God's word and serving and caring about others and having fun in the process. So such great thoughts, you guys. Thank you so much for weighing in.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.